Oh,
Here we
The
go.
anime man.
The official Amtrak post is crazy.
God.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to recommend. They made an entire comic with this conductor and a girl meeting.
What the hell?
They did. They did.
I love
They
these
did.
episode
Amazing.
art style.
They put
And
Batman
It really
with
is
a
episode
woman.
art style.
Also, they recently,
Oh my
also,
God,
they recently
yeah.
did a thing where people said, "Oh yeah, this is the same conductor I got," so they were trying to narrow it down and who is this conductor?
Can I ask about the whole one?
Well,
what's that about?
Oh,
the whole
The-
one.
I
You know
don't-
which one?
Take Amtrak for relief?
Now, what is that
Really
one?
crazy.
That is a really
This was
crazy
made during the gas
advertisement.
crisis of 1979, but I thought it's kind of funny.
That's
That's
so
wild.
funny.
Yeah, I'm really glad you
That's
shared
I
this.
was slow to, also, the picture of the Christmas tree is my own picture I took down Chicago Union Station.
Oh,
Oh, isn't it
that's
Chicago
fun.
Union Station?
It was really cool. And also these figures over here on the left, that's night, and on the right, that's day. I might have gotten those confused, but
Wow.
Okay.
Alright, you recording?
The floor
Yeah.
is yours.
Alright.
Yay.
This is a short history of Amtrak. I will not go as optimistic about this as I could, but
Oh, that's gonna pad the runtime
Oh
there.
God.
So I'm not going to go over the entire history of railroad in America before the 1950s because this would make this 5 hours long. But
Yeah.
to give this a gist, before the 1950s and 60s, railroads were the dominant mode of transportation in the U.S. There was no national rail carrier. There were different private companies, which were profitable because rail travel was just the dominant means. This was everything from rapid transit systems to long-distance rail services to interurbans, basically everything. During the Second World War, this came in very handy because the US could ship things across the country very easily. But during this era, you see the emergence of many named trains and many famous railroad companies. And I've listed the Pennsylvania Railroad, New York Central, Santa Fe, Florida Seaboard, as a couple of examples, although there's Chesapeake and Ohio, Florida East Coast, Milwaukee Road, Chicago North, Michigan. There's a lot. And yes, I did have. There is a lot of different railroads, southern railroads. There's a lot. So that's basically the basis for this.
This is great.
Now let's go to the decline. So we're going to start off with this this bill called the Interstate Highway Act of 1956, passed during the Eisenhower administration. In the post-war boom, as largely American people in American cities, mostly white middle-class people, start moving into the suburbs, as suburbs become much more, basically, well, I wouldn't say popular, but more like subsidized by the government. Car use becomes becomes a growing dominant force in the U.S. This isn't to say that cars immediately overtake all forms of transport, but it's a clear trend. And the Interstate Highway Act basically gives federal money to fund different highway projects, either through to bypass local roads or build highways largely through cities. As you can see from the map, it's pretty extensive. And while some of these highways weren't built, although they're kind of small, large amount of them were. So I could go into a whole thing about that, but I won't. But basically, car travel becomes the more dominant mode in the U.S. And this starts to be an issue for the railroad companies because they're seeing less and less passenger use starting from the 1950s. Their peak was during World War II, but the 1950s sees decreased passenger use, leading to less profit, and they are unable to maintain equipment as well, and they can't keep services up, which forces them to cut services, which means less people even want to take the railroad. It's basically a death spiral. Air travel also will factor into this, but that's more in the late 60s, 70s, because air travel is still expensive at the time. But it certainly will, as you can be evidenced by now, become a dominant mode too of interstate transport.
God.
God, this is immense.
Oh, bless.
Wow.
So let's get some context for what you're watching. On the top left, or not top left, but not the Rock Island, but the jet train, that is a real thing that was done by the New York Central, where they strapped 2 jet
That's
engines
sick.
to a rail car.
Oh,
And
That's
so
really
good.
awesome.
and this is and it hit a top speed of 183 miles per hour.
Oh,
Nah.
But
fucking God.
the train engineer who was also claimed that he was slowing down when it was recorded. So he said that he hit 196. Both of these speeds are the record high speed an American train has gone. And it was set by the New York Central and
Crazy.
basically going into bankruptcy, and they just wanted to see if it was possible. It was. Did anything come of
so
it?
Set up.
funny.
No.
fuck it.
No. But it's really cool. And now now it's just that.
It's a great
on
gem.
on the top right. That is a little later. This is like 1974, but I'm still going to count it. This is Penn Central. I could go into entire history, but Penn Central, the New York Central and Pennsylvania railroads were both failing. They were both bankrupt, so they decided to join because this would surely fix all their problems. It didn't, and they didn't invest in. They started
It's like
investing
having a
more in
baby
real
to
estate
save your marriage.
rather than
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. That's awesome.
they started investing more in real
Great
estate than the
observation.
actual railroads, leading to degrading track conditions, poor maintenance, and this. And so this comes from a corporate film where they basically said, we need fucking money or else like we can't run trains. The bottom is, I forget which train that is, but that's St. Louis Station, which still exists, by the way, although it's not a train station anymore. The bottom left, I just think it's funny. It's a accident from Penn Central had where a train derailed hard enough to go onto an expressway.
Wow.
But no one was killed or injured. It's okay.
Okay.
Like how everyone in that picture is wearing the exact same outfit.
Awesome.
So railroads are going through a bit of a crisis in 1960s. Less and less service, old equipment, failing infrastructure, and no one really cares. Well, there are people who did care, but people who actually like matter, who can get funding, no, not really. So there is increasing public action by mainly many small communities who are only linked by rails to like remedy this, to keep passenger rail alive so that way it doesn't go under. So that leads to
Awesome.
the creation of Amtrak.
Miracle.
So,
Miracle.
This is amazing.
so
Why'd she stop dancing?
no.
Chica.
Sorry, Chica.
No.
Sorry, Chica. So Richard Nixon, of all people, is responsible for Amtrak, which is probably the most insane thing you can say. But basically, he and Congress have an idea. Why don't we make a national passenger network? And so we can satisfy the public's demand that rail travel be kept. But most people think it's going to fail because, like, that was just the prevailing thing. It's like all the infrastructure's dying, all the equipment's old. Like, just satisfy the public's needs. It'll probably fail. 20 out of 26 railroads that still do passenger service decide to do it. Amtrak works like this. It's going to be a company, and a train company, a railroad company, can offset its passenger service to this company. They can still operate all their freight railroads and stuff. And in theory, they have to, like, give the right of way to passenger trains. Does this actually happen? No, not really. To this day, Amtrak trains are still delayed by freight trains. But basically, it is the Rail Passenger Service Act of 1970. And Amtrak is officially formed and goes into operating on May 1st, 1971. This locomotive here is an E8. Actually, no, I think it's an E3. And this was a special livery painted just for this locomotive. A newer locomotive currently wears it as a bit of a tribute for the 50th anniversary of Amtrak. Most expect it to fail, and others think it will become profitable. Spoiler alert, both of those will be wrong. Amtrak will not fail, but it will never be profitable. And the entire stipulation that Amtrak must be profitable is going to haunt basically the entire existence of Amtrak.
Oh, wow.
My God. Hello, Miku.
Miku.
Hi, Miku.
Miku.
So we're going to start off with the Rainbow Era. These are literal names. This is what railroads call these eras.
Happy
Rainbow
Pride
Era-
Month.
Yeah.
Happy Pride
You
Month.
gay and
Perfect.
shit.
The railroad era is right when Amtrak is formed. They have a bunch of thousands of passenger cars and old locomotives, and they pick the best ones they can. And then they continue operating some trains. Now, quite a few trains just stop working on May 1st and, like, are never brought
Oh.
back. So a lot of small communities just kind of get screwed over. But Amtrak's trying. They're trying desperately to keep like the major routes open. Most of these engines are tired. Most of these passenger cars are tired. They just chose the best ones. They don't care about they don't have enough money at this point, so they're just a mix of different railroad companies. Like on this one, that's Amtrak's like first livery with the red nose. That's a Penn Central livery. That's a Santa Fe livery. That's, I don't know. These are just silver back. That's Burlington on the back. So like it's called the Rainbow Era. It's a brief era, but Amtrak starts to buy new equipment from this point on. And this is
Really
everything
love
they
this
got
transition.
in the 1970s. Let's go top left. Top left, these are the Amtrak Superliners. These are double-stacked passenger cars, both coach and sleeper and dining cars.
They're
These are
so
used on,
70s.
they were built by the Bud Company. These are used on all
Oh.
Western routes
Rest in peace.
and the auto train on East. They aren't used in the East because tunnel clearances aren't tall enough for these trains. But on the West, they can be used. The Santa Fe actually was the first one to use these, a different version of these in the 1950s. And so Amtrak kind of adopted the design. They're still used to this day. Although Amtrak is currently thinking of ordering replacements for them in the next 10 years. But
No.
they've served Amtrak well. I've ridden on one. They're very comfortable. They're just very nice. In the middle, this is the General Electric GE60. Amtrak needed new electric locomotives on the Northeast Corridor, which is from Boston to New York. Not New York, Washington, D.C. And the older electric locomotives were like 40 years old. They were the GG1s. I don't have a picture of them, but they're pretty iconic. But they needed new ones. But American manufacturers really weren't building ones, except for GE. And this was a freight locomotive, so they bought it. And they were hoping to run services at 125 miles per hour. They couldn't because it ran really badly. So kind of an imperfect solution. Kind of an imperfect solution for now. This on the very top right is the AMD F40. This becomes an icon of Amtrak. This becomes their do-it-all locomotive that they can put on basically anything and it'll work. On the right underneath it is the SDF40. This was the first new locomotive Amtrak bought. Also, it could be converted to freight, just in case Amtrak still failed. But
She's kind of slay.
it was imperfect. It rode roughly, more so because the rails that it was running under were just really badly maintained, but there were several derailments. So, and crews didn't really like it, but the F40 the one on top, was a much better improvement and also used HEP. These older like square-looking passenger cars use steam heating, and there was a blizzard in 1977 to 1978 that was really brutal in the Northeast. And the F40 turned out to be much better at running in them because they could use HEP, which is the standard nowadays for electrical power and heating in cars. On the bottom left, we have the Amfleets. These are also iconic for Amtrak. These are the lower level passenger cars that are used mainly in the East, and then also some Midwestern routes. They were based off the Bud Metroliner, a EMU train set, which after Japan built the Shinkansen, America really was like, shit, we need to make a faster high-speed rail. And they tried it with cars that looked like this, but they were electrified. It didn't really work. They were unreliable, but the cars were good. So Amtrak just ordered a bunch that weren't powered, and they could just be towed behind a locomotive. They've gone through so many refurbishments, although Amtrak is planning their replacement. But they served 40 years, which is a very long time for a rail car.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden like
Joe Biden loves writing. Joe Biden loves writing.
There's nothing else to say
All right.
except Joe
Is Bethany
Biden
in the
at this
stream?
point is a lowly
I don't
senator
know.
from Delaware
Joe Biden.
who takes Amtrak every day. He's just a senator.
He's a
Sure, he is.
carpetbagger from Delaware?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he takes the train to Congress. And he really likes the train, actually. He talks about it a lot. This will have some impacts in the future. But for now, let's go to the 1980s.
God.
So ominous.
God. Whoa.
Marcel
Pooch.
picture.
Marcel.
Hello,
Yeah.
Marcel.
So, the introduction
Ready
of the
for
phase
ya.
3 paint scheme.
Alright.
I skipped
Is
the first
Bethany
two
in the
because they're
stream?
kind of like
Really love
mostly
this.
unused.
I don't know.
But the phase 3 is the top and bottom ones. Not the middle one, but it's the like red, white, and blue stripes. It's iconic. The AM7 is the one that Marcel was pointing at. These things also become, I'm going to say iconic a lot, but they really are, especially in the railroader community. Basically, Amtrak needs actual electric engines that can do it all and aren't shitty and unreliable. So they test out two models, one French, one Swedish. Turns out they really like the Swedish one. So, so they build a derivative of it. And it is the AEM7. It looks small, but it's powerful and can run up to 125 miles per hour. This becomes the workhorse of the Northeast Corridor, and affectionately are named toasters. To this day, affectionately named the toasters. I remember when I was a kid, I really wanted to ride on one of these like trains that was hauled by them, and then they were taken out of service in 2016. So that was a little sad. But some routes are added. The California Zephyr, the famous train, was added, which goes from Chicago to San Francisco. It's really cool. Some other trains are cut because in 1979, Amtrak gets its budget cut because, I don't know, reasons. So, because the government kind of fucking hates Amtrak at some points because they're like, why aren't you making money? And Amtrak's like, well, we need more funding. And then the government's like, well, do it. Just make money. We're gonna cut your funding. You're not useful.
Just make money, idiots.
So Amtrak thinks, how do we expand without so much money? And it's a simple solution: state-supported corridors. I listed the first states to do it are California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Oregon, and Oregon. But there's more states that will do this. Basically, Amtrak will buy equipment and like support routes. It's their crew. You can book them on Amtrak, but the state will help fund it. So that way, Amtrak doesn't have to fund everything. This has lasted to this day and has allowed Amtrak to expand in certain areas. Throughout the Midwest, for example, Amtrak is technically not the full Amtrak. It's the Amtrak Midwest. So if you ride a train in Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin, those trains are owned by Amtrak, but supported by the states, which takes the burden off of Amtrak. California does this with the San Joaquin, what's it called? Oh yeah, the Pacific Surfliner from LA to San Diego. It's actually a very good system, and it lasts to this day and is allowed for expansion. The F40 has become an icon for Amtrak. Also, this train here is not the F40, but this is the Auto Train. This goes from Lorton, Virginia, which is about 20 minutes outside DC, to Sanford, Florida, which is about 20 minutes outside of Orlando. It was launched in the 1970s and basically allows you to take your car with you on the train. Actually, pretty nice idea. It makes a lot of money. It's to this day, it's the most profitable Amtrak route that's long distance.
I love car train.
This was the first time I ever rode an Amtrak. Yeah. This was the first time I ever rode an Amtrak train. From Virginia to Florida, and it was pretty cool. It's overnight. You get there at 10 a.m. You leave at 5 p.m. the previous day. Also, I say pooch because these are the GE30s. And their acronym looks like the word pooch. So people call them pooch.
Okay.
Pooches. They also
you
kind
want
of
to
look
see
like
a dog?
So
They also are kind of dog shaped.
They are dog.
This is the type of dog.
These locomotives are kind of just a stopgap measure for expanding some capacity, but they're not good. Crews hate them because they don't have AC, and they sometimes ran these things in the West, in the desert.
That's a bad idea.
There's a funny story from a railroader forum where one guy was riding in the cab because he was like the conductor, and the engineer like just randomly started yelling, "Goddamn GE piece of shit," because the window just fell out randomly and hit him in the head. So they get retired by the end of the 1980s. They're just not that great. Let's go to the 1990s.
Oh, that's awful. That was terrible.
Miku.
Miku.
I mean,
we have some major changes. First off, the Pepsi cans. On the very top picture, these are the GE-H. Basically, Amtrak is going to retire the F40s because they're about 20 years old now, so we need modern replacements. But as a stopgap, they order these freight locomotives that are converted to passenger ones. And they're paying in this
I thought
livery.
you said freak locomotives.
Yeah,
All locomotives are a type of freak.
they are a little bit of a freak. Fun fact, they're still in service. They're only used and like they're just odd.
Ready
I
for
used to
ya.
really be fascinated with them as a
Ham-
kid. Also, they were painted in this weird livery that people just call Pepsi can.
Well,
Below that is the GE Genesis. These are the locomotives that are still used to this day on Amtrak's long distance services and also in the city as needed. These become the workhorse of Amtrak. They're lighter, they're more fuel efficient, they're more powerful. They actually have computer technology in them, which for the
They have
1990s,
iPad in them.
that's pretty neat. They have a top speed of 110 miles per hour. The final F40s retired in 2002. And then Amtrak starts thinking, hey, the Northeast Corridor has 125 mile per hour service, but we should make some actual high speed trains. So they get two.
Oh boy.
This is the X2000 on the left from Sweden. This is the ICE-1 from Germany. Amtrak buys neither. But they decide, but they do decide they're gonna buy one, a special one made from Alstom and Bombardier,
those are worms.
and we
They
have
are.
the
The
Acela.
Acela. Finally.
Acela.
Oh, the GIF.
Oh, the GIF failed too. Whatever.
No,
It did a
worked
little
better.
bit. in
No,
the
the gift
beginning.
gift
Yeah,
and
we
then
saw it.
Yeah. Well,
Can I ask you a question, Holly, about the last
yes.
slide? What font is the Amtrak in on the trains? Do you know?
Yes.
Oh.
It's a variation of the Times font,
Oh, really?
which
Ooh.
is what this is in.
Interesting.
This is in
Okay.
Times. Yes. So in 2000, we get the Acela service, the first high-speed rail in America because it can hit 150 miles per hour. Now it can only hit it on 38 miles of the 400 miles of the Northeast Corridor because of track and stuff like that. Although the only areas it can actually hit the 150 miles per hour, those 38 miles are near Boston and Princeton.
it's
That's
in New
it.
Jersey.
That's it.
I was gonna
That's-
say these images really are so New Jerseyan.
They're all the one on the
Yeah.
top is probably near Trenton, I would say.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep it a stack that looks exactly like Hammy Station.
Oh, so the one on the bottom does look like Hamilton Station, but I
I'm
don't know.
pretty sure I could go to the video and check later, but
The bottom and the top one look like Hammy Station.
yeah, it's probably
There's a
New Jersey
similar
because,
pedestrian
like,
bridge.
and also this locomotive in the middle is not the Acela. It is the HHP-8. And these were kind of like the new replacement locomotive, and they're really unreliable.
Oh yeah,
they're
these are the ones that
really-
are sitting in the train yards in like
Yeah.
DC or Philadelphia or something like
They
that because they
are.
can't use them.
Because,
Oh.
and the fun fact is they're going to be used soon, but not running. They're just going to be cab cars, so they're unrunning, but they can like make it so that way the train doesn't have to turn around.
Really looks
Oh,
like Hammy
nice.
Station.
So, like, so the HHP-8 is really unreliable, kind of shitty, and Amtrak just kind of gives up on trying to maintain them. So like, fuck it, we need a better replacement. Also, I mentioned 9/11 because Amtrak sees some ridership growth after 9/11.
So,
For
so I'm
Sure,
sorry. I'm
Biden.
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going
Wake
through a
up.
thing right now, and it's also 12:30, and I'm a little zoned out. And I just tuned back in to hear you talking about 9/11 and also
Yeah.
trains at the same time.
Yes, because people didn't want
Yes.
to fly, so they took the train. Because you can't,
Yeah.
you can
Okay.
derail a plane,
I'm
but it
sorry,
won't
it
go
was
into
just
the
very
twin towers.
strange.
Derail a plane.
The
Derail a
train.
Derail a
plane.
Listen,
plane.
listen,
saw
Holly,
it?
Holly,
Guys,
Holly,
Hear me
Holly,
out.
okay,
I am
this
Hear
is
me
paying
There's a
out.
this
quote in the tweet.
This
I need you
doesn't
to
mean
know
this doesn't mean that
I am paying as much attention as I possibly can right now.
it's
There's
okay.
just a lot of things going on in my brain, but I was a little bit tuned out, and just hearing 9/11 mentioned in this like garble of like train
Well,
words
well,
was
fun fact.
very jarring.
Well, fun fact: while Amtrak's never had hijackings, they have had terrorism. So,
Oh.
this-
Mm.
yeah,
Oh.
Wow.
although not recently, not
Glad to know
since
Amtrak isn't free of
1995.
terrorism.
1995 was like the last time because someone decided to like mess with the rails in like an Amtrak train, and the entire train derailed, and that's like the last
Ooh.
time that like anything. No one knows who it was, but That's like the last time
That was
anything
me.
like.
That was me.
Oh
Sorry,
look, they give.
guys.
My
Oh.
bad.
I ate
Oh,
the
that's one of the more
rails.
Oh yeah,
modern
maybe
trains.
if you
It's gonna
hover
be-
over the gym. Yeah. Oh.
Click
Well.
on it.
Anyways,
She's
Oh.
just shy.
Yeah, it's there.
Hope
That
and
was really
despair.
great.
Joe Biden.
Is the despair Joe
Joe
Biden, and is the
Biden?
hope the
That's Joe Biden. Yeah, we meet him again. It's
Why?
him.
Why is
Oh,
Danganronpa
Joe Biden.
there?
Joe Biden.
Because I made this
Joe
title.
Biden.
Because
Joe
I made this
Biden.
title on
hope and
Fiverr.
Joe
despair?
Biden.
So
Okay.
let's give some
Hello,
context.
Nayagi.
So Amtrak needs new electric locomotives, and Siemens offers a variant for America.
What the fuck
Which
is
is
happening with
very-
someone's
Lee.
mic?
It's Flea's on their iPad.
Happens.
So
Continue.
basically, Siemens is a major rail manufacturer in Europe, and they have the
Yes.
Siemens. So they're a major rail company in Europe, and they have the Eurosprinter, and which is a very successful locomotive for freight and passenger in Europe. And basically, Siemens offers we can make an American version because American locomotives have to be slightly different because of buffer strength and stuff. It's complicated, but basically, Amtrak's like sure, and they try it out, and it works really well. So Amtrak's like, we're going to replace all of our electric locomotives with the ACS 64. And there's still the premier locomotive on the Northeast Corridor. They've been very reliable, just a worthy replacement. Amtrak has plans to improve the Northeast Corridor because a lot of its infrastructure is legitimately 100 years old, or over that. So some stuff needs to be done. There's this project called the Gateway Project, which is to improve the access into Penn Station in New York by replacing bridges, railroad ties, and building a second set of new tunnels underneath the Hudson River to, like, we have.
Who's
So,
gonna tunnel that bitch?
so Amtrak.
Trans Hudson.
So Amtrak in the Midwest also starts thinking, we gotta think of a replacement for those Genesis locomotives because they're eventually gonna get to the age. What can we do? And they go to Siemens again. They're like, can you make a diesel variant? And Siemens says, sure. So on the bottom pick, the locomotive is the Siemens Charger. And a bunch of other railroads across America collectively are like, holy shit, it's a modern like diesel locomotive that meets Tier 4 emission standards. In the US, there's different emission standards for locomotives, and Tier 4 are very strict to cut down on pollution, but this one can like meet it. So a bunch of railroads across the US have ordered them. And then these new cars you see here are the Siemens Venture cars, which also start to see service because Amtrak realizes they're just good. And these are the cars that I rode on when I was last in Chicago. They're pretty good. They have bigger windows than the older ones. They're more spacious. They're modern. So they start replacing older cars and locomotives in the Midwest. And Amtrak actually is close to profitability at this point. Surprising, but they see record ridership. Then COVID hits. And so Amtrak is in a bit of a crisis. So COVID hits, Amtrak has to cut service. Some cases just stop in trains, and then some it's like, oh yeah, instead of once a day, it's like once every like 3 times a week, like that kind of level. It's bad. Amtrak has to put in social distance and stuff, and of course Amtrak is willing to do it, but it's not good. But there is some salvation.
Oh.
Oh.
I don't think it's playing.
Joe
Biden! Money.
Can you hear
Must
it?
be funny.
No way!
We're a rich man's world. No, I'm just singing it to help you.
Yeah,
Joe
I can
Biden.
imagine it in my mind.
Money.
Must be
Funny.
funny.
Oh.
Joe Biden. Amtrak
It's
Joe.
I.
Amtrak Joe.
Track J.
This is really amazing. Wow.
Philadelphia.
So, dude, no
Baltimore?
way.
Hello,
It's
Chicago.
so slow.
Wow.
Chicago.
So
Why is that
Beautiful.
Discord font?
Well, you know.
Happens.
That's like NBC News.
I know, it's like Discord font.
We are
We
so
are
back.
Amtrak probably. Trains!
Grinder.
I didn't Grinder
Grinder.
tweet trains.
You know why?
Well,
Yeah.
Well,
What do gay people do?
Well,
So
Okay.
Amtrak under the Infrastructure and Jobs Act received over 60 billion in funding. 66 actually.
64 billion.
This is the largest amount of funding Amtrak has ever had in its history. That is how insane this is. This was under the Infrastructure and Jobs Act in 2021. And I remember being like a little stunned, like holy shit, that's a lot of fucking money. So Amtrak takes this very well because they immediately start announcing plans for some projects that they've wanted to do and to get new equipment. Also, Amtrak starts this entire trend of like companies tweeting out just one word what they do. Because Amtrak did it. Amtrak decided to tweet out one day trains, and then a bunch of companies did it, but Amtrak's obviously the best one because they actually did it first. Also, I also just found it funny that yeah, the Amtrak Twitter account is pretty funny, I think.
okay.
So you're just gonna ignore
let's-
the grinder one. Sorry. Continue.
No. That was there on
No,
purpose.
She
ignore it.
like
We did not
directly
ignore it.
pointed
I
it
wouldn't
out.
say it was.
I know.
So let's go over some of the new projects that are going to be done. New train sets for the
Wow.
Astellas. These have had some of their issues. They've been on testing on the Northeast Corridor for the past 4 years.
Mike Racer's at New Jersey as well.
Yeah,
It probably is.
It is New
Probably-
Jersey?
There's a really big
probably
train
is.
yard of these, I think.
because Amtrak has been testing out the new Avalia Liberty sets. These are built by Alstom, and these are a variant of the high-speed trains that are going to also be built in France for the TGV. They've had a bit of mechanical problems. Alstom really has dropped the ball. They haven't kept up with Siemens. Siemens has actually done well at making stuff reliable. Alstom hasn't. Alstom kind of hasn't. But Amtrak announced that they've actually improved and they're planning finally to introduce them into service later this year. Hopefully, it will actually happen this time. They're faster. They could run up to 220 miles per hour if track conditions allowed for it. Normally, they're going to run up to 160, but they have more passengers, bigger windows. They're just a good train, and they also have a European-style horn, which is kind of rare in the U.S. These are the new. These
Oh,
are not. This is. I promise you, this is
I
not.
really like the Instagram like
motion
I
I love the
blur.
motion blur.
Yeah, I really
That
like
is a
the-
transformer.
So
Close, that is a train.
So Amtrak goes over to Siemens and is like, hey, we need to replace all of the AM fleets on the Northeast Corridor, and we
do
need
it.
a train that can maybe switch from electrical diesel so that way you don't have to get a different locomotive. And Siemens says, sure. So they haven't been built yet, although one car has been built, so we'll just wait on that. But these are planned to enter into service around 2027 to 2028. These will replace all of the AM fleets. These will be used on the Northeast Corridor and for trains that go past the Northeast Corridor, so they can just switch to diesel. They don't have to get a new locomotive. Makes it very faster. They're more comfortable. These are going to be the new face of like Amtrak intercity operations. These are also being built for the Pacific Northwest to be used on the Cascade services between Seattle and
Portland.
Eugene, if I remember correctly. So they will be used there. So this is the Gateway Project, as I mentioned. And
Newark.
there's some
Hudson
stuff.
Yards.
So going
It's the
from
caucus.
Newark, the Dock Bridge rehabilitation is just making this bridge better. Adding a fourth track to Harrison. The Sawtooth bridges are kind of slow because they're really old, so maybe replacing that. The Porter Bridge, this thing sucks. This bridge fucking sucks. This bridge was built. The bridge itself, I can't really blame the bridge itself because the bridge was built in like 1905. So like,
Oh,
You are
but-
talking shit about somebody's grandma.
but this bridge, here's why this bridge sucks, because barges have to, because it's not big enough, so the bridge has to swing out if
Oh.
a tall boat passes underneath it, which means that, and also the bridge is just old, and even with repairs, oftentimes crews after doing that have to take hammers to barge the rail back together after it
Ugh.
closes.
People with
Or-
hammers.
Also, there was also a derailment like in the 90s, so the maximum speed on this is 60 miles per hour, which is really just
Oh.
and so it's not good. But Amtrak, well, not Amtrak, but the great state of New Jersey announced that yes, they finally are building a replacement for it. Finally,
Hey.
after and it is as of now halfway complete. Once it is done, that bridge will be
Yahoo!
and it'll be better. Adding a loop at Secaucus Junction would just improve capacity. And then building another set of 2 tunnels underneath the Hudson River. Because during Hurricane Sandy, the actual tunnels were damaged. And they've been repaired and stuff, but Amtrak just says that we need to like
That's not
Cheering.
Not a
Why are you cheering?
for damage.
Hurricane Sandy. Woo!
Woohoo, Hurricane
It was poor
Sandy.
timing.
tunnels are flooded. So, so basically, Amtrak says we need to like actually shut them down and spend like months repairing them and rehabilitating them, but that's impossible because otherwise you'd just be cutting off the Northeast Corridor. This is the busiest section of railroad in America. So they're going to build 2 tunnels so they can close down the original tunnels to repair those tunnels, and then by 2038
Bruh.
you will have
Oh,
4 tunnels underneath the Hudson Bay.
Jesus Christ.
So 4
Mhm.
tunnels will allow for even more capacity.
Whoa.
But yeah, this entire project
More
broke ground
tunnels.
in 2023, and we aren't going to see those tunnels until 2035.
Americans are so
Seems
good
like
at
a lot.
infrastructure.
But also, New York Penn Station might have some renovations coming because the original station was beautiful, and then it was demolished and then replaced with Madison Square Garden. So all the station's basically underground. So basically, there's a
April, what have you done?
so Madison Square Garden there's several proposals to maybe get rid of Madison Square Garden and build
Please.
Thank God.
What?
which would be fucking beautiful. But I hope it happens. But even if there also are some plans that if they really want to keep Madison Square Garden up there are some plans to build around it and just overall whatever's done, hopefully in the next like decade,
Bro,
we can
what?
have a Penn Station that actually represents the busiest station in the entire Western Hemisphere. By the way, this is true.
Okay, but what is Billy Joel going to do about his residency in Madison Square Garden if there's no Madison Square Garden?
He gets a room at the train station.
They'll just build
He
it
gets to-
Bro's gonna have to figure something out.
They'll build it somewhere else.
He'll
but
manage.
Basically,
TXT was just there.
well,
Well,
I'm
TC
also
can be there
Oh,
on the
wow.
train.
they'll go to Newark or
Dude,
they'll go
where's
to Newark.
Lemonade Mouth gonna perform?
I'm also a bit confused about
They'll go to
the beef,
Newark. I don't know.
the beef
Like-
against Madison Square Garden.
So
That-
basically,
What is wrong with Madison Square Garden?
It destroyed
Okay,
a big,
you
beautiful
know what?
train station.
you know what? After this presentation is done, I'm just gonna show a pic of what the old Penn Station looked like because I feel like
Look,
there's a lot.
I'm not saying there shouldn't be a nice train station, but why does it have to be where Madison Square Garden is?
because Madison
Because that's
Square
where the old
Garden
one was.
built where the old train station was. Like,
Okay,
with-
but why don't you
so-
get rid of the current one and put the new one
But
there?
It's
Because
underground.
there's no space. Because there's no space. It's New York. It's
Did you forget that's underground?
They're in tunnels in the grounds. They aren't on the surface level
Yeah,
as the streets
basically-
because then you would see the train tracks when you're on Madison Square Garden. They're underground.
God, I
Yeah,
would love to see the
So
train tracks.
basically, Madison Square Garden was built on top of the train station, so all of the train stations underground, which is why it's so cramped. And I think the phrase that was used by a journalist was
You said
once-
furries.
I also
Was-
thought you said furries.
Yeah.
You guys are
It
The
dumb.
phrase
happens.
was used by a journalist to describe the new station compared to the old one was once you entered the city, in the past you entered the city like a god. Now you scurry around like a rat.
Well, it's
So-
New York.
Yeah. So
We're all
There's
rats
parts of
there.
the station that are nice and parts of it that are.
some parts are the
station.
Moynihan Train Hall.
Moynihan
is
Train Hall might be
recently
old.
open for Amtrak. Amtrak uses that. It was built in the right next door, the old postal building. It's actually really nice, and that's where all Amtrak things. So thankfully, if you're using Amtrak, train station actually looks pretty nice. Now, if you're using the Long Island Railroad, Long Island Railroad, or NJ Transit, you still got to scurry
Yeah.
around a bit underneath. You got to scurry around underneath.
There's a Dunkin'.
Yeah.
Isn't it like 3?
So
There's
basically,
an Annie Ann's.
Oh,
think.
there you go.
Well, and then finally we have the big.
Annie Ants.
Thank you,
This
Mr. Dog.
this
Thank
Thanks.
you.
is a map of
I get
Amtrak's
Oh,
plan-
wow.
of
pronunciation.
Amtrak's future plans. So
Dude,
let's
you
go
can't even
ahead.
get to South Dakota.
We're
Yeah, how will South
slogan is
Dakotans
We're
live?
working. We're
Okay.
working to South Dakota. Okay.
So
We'll
all
get
the
there.
all the light blue routes are routes that Amtrak is studying to add. Now some of these trains have been added. Just recently, last month, the Hiawatha trains run between Milwaukee and Chicago. But as of now, there is a train that goes past Milwaukee and to Minneapolis. And this is
Whoa.
called the Borealis.
Dude,
This
Mackie,
doubles
you gotta
the,
do
Aurora
it.
Borealis?
San Luis
Dude.
Obispo is crazy.
this doubles the
When was
entire.
this a thing?
This means that you don't have to get on
Last
the
month.
last month.
Last month. Man,
So
It's Minneapolis.
I drove all the way to Minneapolis for nothing.
now there's a day
You
train.
just
There is
waited.
so before there was only one train that ran this route, the Empire Builder. But the Empire Builder goes from Chicago and splits up to Seattle and Portland. Now this train was frequently delayed. So basically the idea was make a shorter train from only Minneapolis to Chicago so it doesn't get delayed as bad and provides more frequent service. And so now it does. So you can still take the Empire Builder there, but now you can take the Borealis, and the Borealis is most likely not going to get delayed as shit. There's all the red, or not red, but the gold things are increased service, so add in more services. Some of these are interesting. Obviously, for Michigan, the all adding more routes on this would be great. On the Illinois would be great. Some of these corridors, like Vancouver to Eugene, sorry. So these are just making more frequent. So maybe more than one train a day. Because for example, from Grand Rapids to Chicago, that's only one train a day, and the train leaves at 6:30 in the morning. It's a great train,
Oh.
but you do get to Chicago at like 9:30 a.m. But it does suck. So add in like an extra train to that. Now on like Chicago to Detroit, like that's like 3 times a day, but still could add more. But also the light blue are new routes. So some of these routes are kind of historical. Some of these are um going into the Midwest. You obviously have possibility of more Wisconsin service, which would be great.
Whoa.
A
Come
Madison
to Wisco, Wisco Pride.
Ollie,
Let's
tell
go
us about
to
the New Orleans one.
Philadelphia.
Also,
You know
fun fact,
what? Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the Pittsburgh one, but
yes.
Yeah.
So
Dude,
Pittsburgh.
we can finally visit
so
each other.
Pittsburgh to Philadelphia is run by one train per day. The Pennsylvanian. Takes about
Pennsylvania.
6 hours to get.
Pennsylvania.
But there's
Oh,
plans,
balls.
there's plans by 2026 to add a second train to the route. But also maybe extend the train. Maybe going to Cleveland. Maybe even
That'd
Toledo.
be neat.
Potentially, there's also the idea of doing a Detroit to Toronto train or to Detroit to Toledo.
Ooh.
As someone who may live there in the future, I would very much welcome that.
Toronto.
So there's also maybe some expansion in the South. There's also maybe.
Please talk about New Orleans.
Okay,
Please.
fine. I'll talk about New Orleans. So New
Please.
Orleans, we
Oh,
have
God.
one from New Orleans to Baton Rouge because there's no train service there. There's also planned this year for the Sunset Limited, which goes from Los Angeles to New Orleans to go all the way to Mobile. Now you might be wondering what this dotted line is. Well, the train up until 2005 actually went all the way to Orlando. There was a point in history where you could take a train from Orlando to Los Angeles, but then Hurricane Katrina came in.
Well,
There
But
was
there's a lot of support to bring it back, and I hope it happens. Now
are you talking about
looking,
Scranton?
yes,
Scranton.
Scranton. Yes, there is
Scranton.
one. There's also the idea for Amtrak to do a train there, and also Allentown or
And
Rome.
Reading.
Yes.
Reading. Damn.
So
the hell's happening in Reading?
Los
Nothing.
Angeles to Las Vegas
Not much, but
Amtrak
hey.
route is diabolical.
Bright line.
Well, so there's also if we look into the very northeast, maybe a new route from Rutland to Montreal. That'd be pretty cool for Vermont. Maybe New Hampshire will get some rail. Maybe maybe Manchester and
Please,
Concord
New
can get some.
Hampshire.
They have a
For
commuter
Mads,
rail?
please.
New Hampshire historically has been pretty hostile to railroads because they don't want people from
Damn.
Boston to go there. So
Damn.
Well, who can blame them?
So New Hampshire, I think, passed like a bill years ago saying don't fucking expand like the Boston commuter rail system into New Hampshire. For the love of God, don't do it. But Amtrak
really
may do it,
funny.
and that'd be good because Amtrak, not
They
Amtrak,
should.
I think they should.
New Hampshire,
I
for
think
being
so
in
too.
New England, does not
So
have much.
too.
Only has 4 Amtrak stations, and they're not even in any of the big cities. They're on the coast. So yeah, there's also some routes to maybe go from Dallas to Houston. This may be an actual proper
It's real.
high-speed railroad. Although that's a very complex story, but one that is being built is not an Amtrak route. It's from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, and it is being built by Brightline, the same company that
Brightline.
built
That's
the
sickening. That's
Orlando.
going to enable so many problems.
So I feel like so I'm just gonna so here's the thing. Brightline recently finished its Orlando to Miami. Now, people call it a high-speed rail. It's higher speed, but it's
Mid-speed
maximum
rail.
125 miles per hour on only part of the section of track. The rest of the track is 110 or 80. But the one from Las Vegas to Los Angeles will actually be high speed. Use high-speed train sets and run at the max speed of 180.
That's
Dude,
crazy.
that rail line is gonna ruin someone's life.
So, basically, Brightline just announced
Fast
groundbreaking
travel
on
to
it and
gambling.
plan to complete it by the 2028 Olympics. I hope they
Not,
do because
not
that
gonna
would be
happen.
Where is
Well,
the
well-
2028 Olympics being
LA.
held? Is it?
yes.
Yes.
Fucked
You
up.
didn't know that?
That's why LA
fucked.
is implementing so
LA,
many
all of
like
the
train lines now because they're like, oh
Oh,
shit,
I
we gotta do
didn't
the
know
Olympics
that.
in 4 years.
I didn't
So-
know that.
so-
That's
so-
fucked.
You're like,
So,
dude, our
basically,
infrastructure
I
fucking
have-
sucks.
God.
So I have confidence that Brightline could pull this off in 4 years because they actually were on time with the Orlando to Miami extension, and they actually were decently on time. Brightline is very confident. I hope they can do it because it would be pretty fucking cool if we could actually show that we could build a high speed line in 4 years. Also, it would be kind of funny because the California high speed rail from Bakersfield to Merced is still under construction, opening at the end of the decade. We still got to figure out this.
Right.
That's also a proper high speed line. It is
Nobody-
actually under construction.
Nobody wants to go to Bakersfield. That's the
Well-
other thing. Why
Well,
Bakersfield?
but the thing is though, the reason why it's being built in the Central Valley is for that reason because
This is true.
because
Never mind, I take it back.
because people in the Central Valley support it because it would mean in
Yeah.
theory they could get to San Francisco easier. They could, and more people would actually maybe visit the Central Valley. It's why Fresno, for
This
example,
is
is very
true.
supportive
This is
of
true.
it.
That also
Fresno
means I
could
don't have
needs
to
it.
take the 5.
It would,
Yeah.
it would
I don't like
Yeah.
the 5.
It would actually get people maybe to visit, especially if it's a
Yeah.
proper high speed rail system.
you
So,
put the trains-
Sorry, I have beef with Bakersfield due to the fact that like
5.
fucking
so
what's that guy? The guy who like got Jesus, his name is like it ends with McConnell. No, Kevin McCarthy.
Mr. Beast.
No, Kevin McCarthy is from Bakersfield.
Mr. Beast.
also
Jimmy
I do
Beast
not
is
think
from
he-
like one of the Carolinas.
Jimmy
don't think
Beast.
to
I
keep
don't
it
think
brief,
Mr. Breast is from Bakersfield.
Mr. Bryce.
Mr. Breast. What's Mr. Breast getting up to?
All right.
Ollie.
to keep it brief, the Dallas to Houston service. So basically, there's this project called Texas Central, and it would basically mean building a proper high-speed rail system using Japanese technology between Dallas and Houston. And Amtrak actually announced last year that they are going to support it, which would be a bit insane if Texas ended up having high-speed rail faster than the Northeast, but whatever, that'd be kind of. But anyways, high-speed. So basically, this is their vision. And while yes, you could do better, it's a clear difference. It's not Amtrak cutting routes. It's Amtrak being optimistic that they can expand service, expand frequency, because ridership numbers have actually come back very strong. Even 4 years after the pandemic, Amtrak has shown like pretty high ridership. People like taking the train, and really, Amtrak is confident that they can pull it off, especially when you get $66 billion, and also the federal government last
Yeah.
year,
Biden.
and also
Biden.
And last year, the federal government announced that they're going to give money for Amtrak to study different like service corridors. Basically, studying means you can like assess what you'll need to do it, bring it back in action, all that. So really, there's hope. There's actual hope in the railroad community that Amtrak can do stuff.
We did it, Joe.
So an addendum.
Joe.
A little bit.
Oh.
Boing.
We got an addendum here. Now,
Oh.
Okay.
What?
why the fuck would I talk about Amtrak? Well, because I've only ridden Amtrak like 2 times in my life, although I've
We
seen
know
more of
why.
the trains because I live in Florida. But Amtrak was like the first passenger railroad that I actually knew of. When I was a little kid, I knew of it, and I
Little
Did you
amoeba.
learn about it on
Like-
lots and lots of Cars and Trains?
Well, I was into all of it as a kid. The first ever TV show I watched as a kid, the first ever cartoon, when I was a baby, was Thomas the Tank Engine.
Many such things.
God,
British
same.
people.
So basically, Amtrak has weirdly just been something I've always been interested in. As a kid, it was because, ooh, train go fast, wow. And nowadays, it's because, wow,
You're
I really don't
transgender.
want to take a plane, but I also really don't want to fly.
The A word.
I'm not fly, but drive. I don't really want to drive. But, and sometimes taking a plane is just more convenient. But taking a train can be more scenic. And especially if you're taking a train to a shorter distance, like Miami to Orlando.
Also, the train
You don't
is
want to fly
fun.
there, but you don't want to really drive there because that entails driving on I-95 for
Hate
a lot.
I-95 with so much of my being.
And I can assure you that I-95 is really fucking bad here. So
I-95 is crumbling.
or the turnpike. Really, Orlando.
I'm a
Really,
Christian
really,
mom against the I-95.
I could rant about Orlando and its highways, but anyways, Brightline
I'm a mom
Operating has
against
actually
Lord.
seen very high ridership because people like it. It's you can take a train there because it's the perfect amount of distance for a train to be successful. So yeah, that's really it. Also, I really hope you tell me right now if the audio works on this because
I don't think it will. I don't think you're sharing audio. Because it didn't work at any point.
He also didn't play the video before, so.
Can you hear?
Okay, this doesn't have audio.
No.
Oh.
I don't think you're sharing audio like on Discord.
Hold on. Let's do it. In any case, hold on. I'll just I'll just get the actual video. So, and then
I don't know that that's the problem.
I think you need to fix your stream, Holly. Not that there you
Hold
go.
on.
Yeah.
Good job.
You could just pull up the
Was that not on
video and
purpose?
share your whole screen.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
So let me. Okay, now tell me if this works.
It does.
Oh, it certainly is now.
This is a real song used by an Amtrak commercial.
Oh.
Hello, Spirit.
Wow.
New Jersey!
Oh, that's nice.
This is an actual
Ilana
video?
Car's just so
Yes.
pretty.
Wow. Yeah.
Michigan. Pacific Surf Minor Capital Corridor.
Tampa?
Town Eastern. This is
They have.
Wow, the audio is working really well for this song. Jesus
Impact.
Christ.
The only versions of this song, this was used as a commercial jingle in Amtrak's old commercials, and there was no high quality version of it until like a couple months ago. Someone randomly managed to find apparently employees were given the actual proper audio on vinyl. And
It
someone
sure
found
does
it
sound
for
like
sale.
a
And
tape
someone
of it.
found it for sale and was like, holy shit, so they bought it and digitized it because they were a rail fan. And they needed us to hear the full quality version of this beautiful song. But anyways, that's my presentation. That is
Yay,
Amtrak.
That
And
was good.
I love it.
It was really
Thank
good.
you.